Outside the walls of Troy, there is a place where the ground remembers peace. Two springs, and beside them the smooth stone basins where the women of Troy once washed their clothes. In the days before the Greeks came, laundry dried on these stones. Mothers and daughters stood here and talked. It was the most ordinary place in the world. Today, two men run past it at a dead sprint. Once, twice, three times, four. And they are not racing for a prize. They are racing for one of their lives. The man in front is Hector, crown prince of Troy. The man behind him is Achilles. They are the two most important figures in the Iliad, the two the poem names most often, and in almost every respect they are polar opposites. That contrast is not decoration, it is the key to the epic's final resolution, and above all to the meaning of Achilles' character. To understand either of these men, you have to measure him against the other. Begin with the man in front. Hector is a fully realized human being, embedded in his community, living inside his family. The poem shows him in nearly every form of human connection imaginable: a prince leading his people, a commander directing warriors on the field, a son, a brother, and specifically the older brother of a troublesome younger sibling named Paris, a husband, a father. No figure in the epic appears in so many recognizable human roles, and that is why so many readers find Hector the most sympathetic, most accessible man in the poem. He is the one who looks most like us. Achilles stands at the opposite pole. In an isolation the poem presents as almost inhuman. Part of it is his own choice. When he withdraws from the community of warriors, retreats to his tent, and refuses to fight, he cuts himself off deliberately. But the isolation runs deeper than the quarrel. The ordinary human family that surrounds Hector simply does not exist for him. His father is alive but far away, absent from the action, out of reach. His mother is close by, and his mother is a goddess. That fact needs a cultural translation because a modern audience will read it exactly backwards. We are trained to admire the rugged individualist, the one who goes his own way, walks his own path, and holds himself apart from the ordinary run of humanity. We see a kind of grandeur in that solitude. Homeric culture saw nothing of the kind. In this world, a human being is defined by their place within a community, whose son you are, whose father you are, where you fit, and what role you fill. By that measure, a person without a community is scarcely a human being at all. So the isolation of Achilles does not signal his greatness as a hero. To Homer's audience, it looks strange, bizarre, genuinely inhuman. It makes him odd, anomalous, less than fully human. And the poem does not state this opposition once and move on. It develops the contrast patiently across the whole epic, along three lines: their families, their knowledge of the future, and their reasons for fighting. Family is the most obvious. Hector's parents are human, alive, and physically present, watching the battle from the walls of Troy. They will still be on those walls when their son's body is dragged around the city behind a chariot. Achilles' father is still living, but far away and utterly inaccessible, and his mother Thetis appears whenever he calls, yet her divinity stands between them like a wall. She cannot empathize with her son the way a human mother could, because her experience is, by definition, nothing like human experience. Set the two mothers side by side. Hecabe is aged and pitiable, exactly the figure you would expect. An elderly woman fearful for her most important son. When she and Priam beg Hector not to face Achilles, she bares her aged breasts and reminds him that she nursed him there as an infant, that she grew old caring for him and his brothers. It is an appeal to pity, from a mother who knows that if he goes out to die, she will be left defenseless before the Greeks. Thetis is her opposite in every significant way. She is forever young, ageless, untouched by the sorrows and the ravages of time. She grieves for Achilles, and the grief is real, but it is the grief of an immortal, invulnerable goddess, and that is a fundamentally different thing. However long her son lives, his entire life is one brief episode inside an existence that never ends. Hecabe stands to lose everything she has. Thetis will simply continue, forever. A mortal mother and a deathless one are not weeping over the same loss. The same contrast runs through marriage and children. In Book 6, Hector is shown with his wife Andromache and their infant son Astyanax, tender, unguarded, a loving husband and a loving father. Achilles is unmarried. He has the concubine Briseis, and for most of the epic even she is taken from him. He has a son, Neoptolemus, and that son never appears in the Iliad. In the wider epic tradition, Neoptolemus does eventually fight at Troy, which raises an awkward puzzle of chronology. For this poem, the puzzle does not matter. What matters is that the son is absent. Hector is surrounded by father, mother, brothers, sisters, in-laws, wife, and a child. Achilles has the occasional visit of a goddess. The second contrast is knowledge of the future. Hector is humanly fallible about what is coming. Again and again in the epic, he misunderstands prophecies, disregards them, misreads omens. When the dying Patroclus speaks a genuine prophecy of Hector's own death, Hector fails to recognize it for what it is. Right up to the final moment of his life, he keeps hoping to survive. The blindness to fate, the misread signs, the stubborn hope, all of it marks him as thoroughly, recognizably human. Achilles needs no prophecy at all. His knowledge of his own two fates sets him apart from every ordinary person in the poem. When his immortal horse, Xanthos, foretells his death, Achilles answers in effect that he already knows, and that there is no point in telling him. He does not misread the future, and he does not resist it. After Patroclus dies, he does something stranger than knowing. He chooses. Of his two destinies, he selects the one that leads to his own death, and he selects it with open eyes. The third contrast is the reason each man fights. Book 6 makes Hector's answer plain. He would rather not fight at all. He would rather stay home with his wife and his child, living at peace in a flourishing Troy that had never gone to war. That is the life he actually wants. But he is the crown prince. If defending his city and his people means fighting, then he will fight. Even against Achilles, even facing near certain death, he sets his own desires below the good of his community, because his position demands it. Achilles is the reverse, twice over. First, he refuses to fight at all, because Agamemnon has seized Briseis and stripped him of his prize of honor. Then, when he finally does return, it is not because Patroclus pleaded that the Greeks needed him. It is not because fire has reached the Greek ships, the exact line at which he said he would move. He returns purely for vengeance. He sets his love for one individual above the good of the whole community, precisely where Hector places the community above himself. Beneath all three contrasts lies a single deeper one. Hector accepts the full implications of the human condition, of what it means to be mortal, even when the cost to himself is enormous. He accepts the realities of life in the world as it is. Achilles rejects them. He refuses to be reconciled to the death of Patroclus. He refuses to accept that it is real. He refuses to acknowledge that death in battle is an ordinary hazard of war. And he, of all men, has the least excuse for that refusal. Achilles himself gave Patroclus his own armor and sent him into the fighting, warning him only to drive the Trojans back from the ships and press no further. He must have known there was a real chance his friend could be killed, doing even that much. He knew, and he sent him anyway. Warriors die in battle. In this poem, it is the least extraordinary event there is. Yet Achilles reacts as though such a thing had never happened before to anyone in the history of the world. All of it comes to a head in Book 22 beneath the walls of Troy. The Trojan army has poured back inside the city. One man remains outside the gate, and it is Hector waiting while Achilles closes across the plain. Above him, on the wall, his father and his mother beg. Priam pleads with his son to come inside. Hecabe holds out to him the breast that once fed him. Hector hears them both. He does not move. Instead, standing before the gate, he begins to talk to himself. The soliloquy is a man arguing with his own dread, and Homer lets us hear every turn of it. Hector considers retreating inside the walls. He walks through the possibility honestly, step by step, and what stops him is shame. In Book 6, he had told Andromache that he would feel shame before the Trojan men and the Trojan women if he ever shrank from battle. Now that promise comes due. He reminds himself of the disgrace retreat would bring, of what it would make him in the eyes of his own people, and he resolves to stand and fight. Then Achilles actually arrives, and the resolve is not enough. Homer describes him as looking like Ares himself, the very god of war, his armor blazing around him. What comes down the plain toward Hector does not look like a man, and Hector, who had made up his mind, who talked himself into standing line by line, watches that fire come on, and is overwhelmed by fear and runs. It is one of the most intensely human moments in the epic. He decided to face the thing he dreads. Then the moment arrived, and he could not. The poet reaches for an image from the world of the games. The two men run like champions in a foot race, he says, two athletes at full stretch. Then he turns the image over, and it goes cold. In a foot race, the runners are competing for a prize. Here there is no prize. What these two runners are contending for is the life of Hector. And as the chase goes on, the poem slides into nightmare. Hector's sensations, Homer says, are like one of those dreadful dreams in which a man strains to run and cannot move his feet. He pushes with everything he has and gets nowhere. He cannot get away, and the pursuer behind him never falls back. Everyone knows that dream. Homer is describing what it feels like to be a man, running from something that is more than a man. Their course takes them past a landmark, two springs, and beside them the broad stone basins where the wives and daughters of Troy used to wash their clothes in the days of peace, before the Greeks came. 4 times the two men sprint past them. It is about as ordinary, as everyday a detail as the poet could have chosen. That is exactly why he chose it. A race for a man's life, staged at the place where his people once did the laundry. Because the washing place stands for a whole vanished world, a time when women could safely leave the city, when marriages endured and the children grew up, when domesticity, family life, and the community were simply the shape of an ordinary day, before Paris and Helen violated the bonds of marriage and destroyed all of it. The springs hold everything the Trojans have lost, and everything Hector is, and he runs past them 4 times, with death closing behind him. That world is never coming back. The chase cannot last forever. At last, Hector stops, understanding that he cannot escape, and turns to face what has been chasing him. Before they fight, he makes a proposal. Let each man swear an oath. If Hector kills Achilles, he will return Achilles' body to the Greeks. If Achilles kills Hector, he will return Hector's body to his family. It is exactly the right thing to ask. It is what civilized, decent, honorable warriors owe one another, and the customs of human society sanction it. Achilles refuses flatly. There will be no oaths between them. When he has killed Hector, he says, he will throw the body to the dogs, and Hector's parents will never have it back. He does not bargain. He does not counter. He promises the dogs, hold the shape of that exchange, because it is the whole poem in miniature. Hector proposes what human custom requires. Achilles answers by violating it. So the man fights the force. Behind the human action, the gods are at work, as they nearly always are in this epic. Apollo stands by Hector, strengthening him, keeping him in the fight. Then Zeus holds out a golden scale. Into his 2 pans he places 2 portions of death, one of them the fate of Hector, the other the fate of Achilles. He weighs them. The pan holding Hector's fate sinks. Do not misread the scale. Zeus is not deciding who dies. Those fates were fixed long before this moment, and the weighing determines nothing. It is a vivid visual representation of a destiny already set, displayed at the instant it comes due. But the gods read it, and they obey it. The moment the pen sings, Apollo abandons Hector. Athena moves to Achilles' side, and Achilles strikes Hector down into the dust. Hector lies dying, and he spends his last breath not on his life, but on his body. He implores Achilles, by Achilles' own life, by his own father and mother, not to defile his corpse. Let Priam and Hecabe ransom it, he begs. Whatever they offer, let an old father and an old mother buy back their son and bring him home for burial. Even now, dying, the difference between the two men holds. Hector's last thought is of his family and of the customs that make men human. The reply is not refusal alone, it is a speech of extraordinary brutality. There will be no entreating him, Achilles says. He wishes his fury would drive him to hack away Hector's flesh and eat it raw himself for what Hector has done to him. And no one, he swears, will hold the dogs off from Hector's head. It is worth pausing on that speech, and not only for the threat of cannibalism, for what Hector has done to him. Weigh that charge. What Hector has done is kill Patroclus in open battle, and that is the normal reality of warfare. Any man who sends his closest friend into a war has accepted that the friend may die. Now weigh the other side. Achilles has killed a great many of Hector's brothers. If either man on that field has grounds to say to the other, I can never forgive you, it is Hector who has watched brother after brother fall to the single opponent, not Achilles who has lost one friend. Achilles' reading of his own injury is skewed and wildly out of proportion. He cannot see it, and he can offer Hector no pity and no mercy whatsoever. And Achilles goes further, because refusal alone is not enough for him. He does not simply deny Hector burial. He actively and deliberately defiles him. And the act produces one of the most famous images in the Iliad, one that has echoed through Western literature ever since. Achilles fastens Hector's corpse to his chariot and drags it through the dust, around the walls of Troy, in full view of the mother and father standing on them. In any culture, the act would be dreadful. In this one, it is worse than it looks. In the world of the Homeric epics, an unburied body bars its soul, its Zeus, from entering the underworld. And the underworld is no reward. Hades is a gloomy place, and existence there holds little appeal. But the poem is clear that one thing is worse than being a shade in Hades, and that is being a shade shut out of it. No longer alive, not properly among the dead. An everlasting limbo with no crossing and no end. By keeping Hector's body, Achilles condemns his enemy to exactly that. And here the poem closes a terrible circle. Achilles is doing the same thing to Patroclus. He refuses to bury his friend because burial means letting him go. And so, without intending it, he holds Patroclus in the very limbo he has built for Hector out of hatred. In Book 23, the ghost of Patroclus will come to him in the night and plead for a funeral, so that he can pass into Hades. And on the walls of Troy, Priam and Hecabe watch their son dragged through the dust and see both horrors at once. What is being done to his body, and where his soul cannot go, one person in Troy does not yet know. Inside the palace, in her own chambers, Andromache has heard nothing. While her husband was being killed, she was giving instructions to her maids. Heat water, draw a warm bath so that Hector can wash when he comes in from the fighting. Then a sound reaches her, mourning and lamentation rising from the city, and fear seizes her that the grief is for Hector. She runs like a mad woman through the streets. She reaches the wall. She looks down at the plain and sees a body being dragged behind a chariot, and she faints. As she falls, her headdress and the veil slip from her head onto the stones of the street, and inside that small detail, Homer works a play on words that no translation can carry. The Greek word for her veil is kredemna. The same word also means the battlements and the ramparts of a city, and to throw down a city's kredemna is to sack it, to capture it. So when Andromache casts down her kredemna in the street, the listener hears the second meaning underneath the first. Her fallen veil prefigures and almost embodies the sack of Troy itself, the destruction her husband's death has now made certain. And the veil carries one more layer still. In this world, the veil is the emblem of a married woman. Hera herself, the patroness of marriage, is regularly shown with one, often holding it out to draw the eye. When a city is conquered, its women are taken into slavery, and as the fates of Briseis and Chryseis have already shown, slavery for women in this society means sexual slavery, the obligation to serve a new master. The image for that violation of a woman and of her marriage is a veil torn violently away. Hector himself foresaw it in Book 6. Troy will fall, and Andromache will be carried off as the possession of a Greek master. Her fallen veil says that his prophecy has already begun to come true, and Achilles has gained nothing. Killing Hector does not appease his grief for Patroclus. It does not satisfy his hunger for vengeance. So he moves on to defiling the body, because it is all he has left to do. The man who accepted mortality is dead. The force that refused it stands over the corpse, still unsatisfied, dragging it through the dust. But the poem has planted a seed inside the horror. It is precisely through killing Hector and through defiling him that Achilles will at last find his way back into society and back into his own humanity. The road home runs through the body in the dust and through a grieving old father who will one day come to claim it.